The little girl stood in the middle of the hotel lobby with both hands wrapped around a wrinkled lunch bag, her school shoes dusty from running, her cheeks wet with tears she had tried to wipe away before anyone noticed. The morning sun poured through the tall glass doors behind her, turning the marble floor gold, but nothing about that bright day felt warm when she looked up at the man in the expensive gray suit and asked, "Can you please let mommy rest just one day?" Those words stopped Orlan Vexley, the strict general manager of the Grand Astor Hotel, harder than any complaint, any inspection, or any emergency meeting ever had. Around him, guests were checking out, phones were ringing, luggage wheels were rolling across the floor, and the staff moved quickly through another busy morning. But for one silent second, the whole world seemed to shrink down to a tired child asking for mercy on behalf of her mother. Before we go further, if you believe kindness can change someone's life, if you believe people deserve second chances when the world has been too hard on them, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. Your support helps stories of hope, compassion, and humanity reach more hearts. The girl's name was Vera Solin, and she was only 8 years old, but there was something in her eyes that looked much older than childhood. She was supposed to be at school. Instead, she had walked 6 blocks from the small apartment she shared with her mother, carrying the lunch her mother had forgotten on the kitchen table after leaving for work before sunrise. Her mother, Mireya Solin, worked as a housekeeper at the Grand Astor, cleaning rooms, changing sheets, scrubbing bathrooms, and smiling politely at guests who rarely looked her in the eye. Orlan knew Mireya only as employee number 417 on a staffing chart. She was reliable, quiet, and always available when someone called in sick. That was what mattered to him. He was a man who believed schedules were sacred, deadlines were law, and emotions were something people used when they wanted special treatment. He had built his career on discipline. He did not raise his voice often, but everyone at the hotel knew that disappointing him meant losing hours, losing shifts, or sometimes losing your job. That morning, Mireya had been assigned 12 rooms on the 8th floor because 2 workers had called out and a corporate inspection was expected by noon. Orlan had already sent 3 messages demanding the floor be finished faster. He had not asked why Mireya looked pale when she clocked in. He had not noticed her hand pressing against her side when she pushed the linen cart. He had not cared that she had worked 9 days in a row. Vera had noticed everything. She had noticed her mother sitting on the edge of the bed before dawn, trying to button her uniform with trembling fingers. She had noticed the small bottle of pain medicine beside the sink, the unpaid electricity bill tucked under a magnet, and the way her mother whispered that she was fine even though her forehead was damp and her breathing was heavy. Most children believed adults when they said they were okay. Vera had learned not to. At the hotel, the front desk clerk tried to stop her gently, but Vera slipped past with the lunch bag held against her chest like a mission. She did not know where the employee elevator was, and she did not know the rules. She only knew that her mother had not eaten breakfast and that when her mother forgot lunch, it usually meant she would work the whole day on nothing but water. When she saw Orlan walking through the lobby with 2 supervisors behind him, she recognized him from the badge her mother had once pointed to with quiet fear. He was the boss. So she ran to him. At first, Orlan thought the child was lost. He looked annoyed, then confused, then visibly uncomfortable as people began turning their heads. Vera held out the lunch bag and told him that her mommy was upstairs cleaning rooms, that she had a fever, that she cried in the bathroom last night because her body hurt, but she still came to work because they needed rent money. She said she had tried to tell her mother not to go, but mommy said bosses do not pay people for being tired. The word struck the lobby like a dropped glass. Orlan's first instinct was to protect the hotel's image. A child crying in the lobby was not professional. Guests were staring. Staff were frozen. But then Vera looked at him with a kind of desperate courage and asked again if he could please let her mommy rest just one day. Not forever. Not for a gift. Not for money. Just one day. Something in Orlan's expression changed, though he did not understand it yet. Maybe it was the way the child held that lunch bag with both hands. Maybe it was the way she was trying to be respectful even while begging. Or maybe it was because, for the first time in years, someone had made him see an employee not as a position on a schedule, but as a person with a child waiting at home. He asked a supervisor to take him to the 8th floor. The elevator ride felt unusually long. The supervisor, Brenna Vale, quietly explained that Mireya had picked up extra shifts for months. She never complained. She never refused overtime. She often covered rooms left unfinished by others. Orlan frowned and asked why no one had reported that she looked ill. Brenna lowered her eyes and said people were afraid that reporting weakness would be seen as creating problems. Orlan did not answer. He stared at his reflection in the elevator doors and suddenly saw a man who had trained people to hide pain from him. On the 8th floor, the hallway smelled of fresh linen and cleaning spray. Sunlight came through the far window, bright and almost cruel. A housekeeping cart stood outside room 812, stacked with towels and sheets. Inside, Mireya was kneeling beside the bed, trying to pull a fitted sheet across the mattress with shaking arms. Her face was pale, her lips pressed tight, and when she stood, she swayed. Vera rushed to her, and Mireya's first reaction was fear. Not fear for herself, but fear that her daughter had broken a rule and that this would cost her the job. She apologized before Orlan even spoke. She apologized for the interruption, for her daughter coming there, for being behind on rooms, for not looking presentable. She apologized so many times that Orlan felt a slow shame rise inside him. He looked around the room. A half-cleaned bed. A bucket of supplies. A woman barely standing. A child clutching her waist like she could hold her mother together by force. For years, Orlan had demanded excellence from people without asking what it cost them. He had praised sacrifice in staff meetings but punished anyone who admitted they were breaking. Mireya tried to explain that she could finish the rooms. She said she only needed a few minutes. She said she could not miss a day because the landlord had already warned her. Vera interrupted, crying now, saying her mother had fallen asleep at the kitchen table twice that week and had burned her hand on a pan because she was too tired to feel it quickly enough. Mireya gently told her not to say more, but the truth had already entered the room. Orlan did not raise his voice. He did not give a speech. He simply told Mireya that she was going home, with pay, and that a doctor would be called to check on her before she left. Mireya stared at him as if she had misunderstood. Paid rest was not something she had ever expected from the world. In her life, rest usually came with punishment. The news traveled through the hotel faster than the inspection team. Staff whispered in laundry rooms, behind service doors, and near the kitchen. Some were relieved. Some were suspicious. They had seen managers act kindly for a day and return to coldness the next. But Orlan could not shake what he had seen. After the doctor confirmed that Mireya was exhausted, dehydrated, and fighting a serious infection, Orlan sat alone in his office and looked at the staffing reports with new eyes. The numbers had always comforted him. Efficiency percentages. Labor costs. Room turnover times. But now each number had a face. Behind every completed room was a back that ached. Behind every overtime shift was someone missing dinner with a child. Behind every perfect inspection score was a worker who might be afraid to say they needed help. That afternoon, while sunlight still filled the hotel lobby, Orlan cancelled the corporate inspection lunch and called a staff meeting instead. Employees gathered uncertainly, many still holding cleaning cloths, trays, or maintenance radios. Orlan stood before them without his usual polished confidence. He admitted that he had built a workplace where people felt safer hiding illness than asking for rest. He said that was not discipline. It was failure. His failure. Then he announced immediate changes. No employee would work more than 6 days in a row without written approval and a wellness check. Emergency paid rest days would be created for workers facing sudden illness or family crises. Housekeeping room quotas would be reduced during understaffed shifts instead of pushed onto the few who showed up. Supervisors would be trained to recognize burnout, and any manager who punished someone for reporting unsafe exhaustion would answer directly to him. The room stayed silent for a long moment. Then an older dishwasher named Sable quietly began to cry. A bellman looked down. A laundry worker covered her mouth. These were not people asking for luxury. They were people who had forgotten what it felt like to be considered human at work. Mireya stayed home for 3 days, and each day Orlan personally made sure her pay was processed. At first, she felt guilty. She cleaned her apartment even when she should have been lying down. She folded clothes, checked bills, and apologized to Vera for scaring her. But Vera climbed into bed beside her and told her that the boss had listened. For the first time in a long time, Mireya let herself sleep in daylight, not because she had given up, but because someone had finally told her she was allowed to heal. When Mireya returned to the hotel, she expected awkward looks. Instead, she found a small card taped to her locker. It was signed by nearly every member of the housekeeping team, the kitchen team, and the front desk. They thanked her daughter for saying what many adults had been too afraid to say. Mireya read the card twice, then pressed it to her chest. Orlan changed too, but not in a sudden magical way. Real change is slower than a speech. He still cared about standards. He still expected good work. But he began walking the floors differently. He asked questions and waited for real answers. He learned the names of employees' children, parents, and dreams. He discovered that the night janitor was studying to become a nurse, that a breakfast cook had not taken vacation in 4 years, and that one of the quietest housekeepers wrote poetry during lunch breaks. The hotel changed with him. Sick workers stopped hiding symptoms until they collapsed. Supervisors began adjusting workloads before exhaustion became danger. Guests noticed warmer staff, cleaner rooms, and a different feeling in the building that no luxury renovation could buy. The Grand Astor became known not only for service, but for the way it treated the people who provided it. Months later, the hotel hosted a daytime appreciation ceremony in the garden courtyard. White chairs were arranged beneath green trees, and sunlight moved softly across the tables. Employees brought their families. Children ran near the fountain. For once, the people who usually stood behind the scenes were seated in front. Mireya wore a pale blue dress Vera had helped choose. She looked healthier, stronger, and more peaceful than she had in years. Vera sat beside her, swinging her feet, proud but shy. Orlan stepped to the microphone and spoke about the day a child walked into his lobby and asked for something so simple that it exposed everything wrong with the way he had been leading. He did not call himself a hero. He said the hero was the little girl who believed her mother deserved rest, even when the adults around her had forgotten how to ask for it. Then he invited Vera forward. The crowd clapped gently as she walked up, holding her mother's hand at first, then letting go. Orlan handed her a small framed certificate, not for charity, not for publicity, but as a promise. It said that the Grand Astor's new employee care program had been named the Vera Rest Day Fund. Every year, it would help workers facing medical emergencies, family hardship, or exhaustion that could not be ignored. Vera looked at the certificate, then back at her mother, and smiled like the sun had finally found them. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to channel name. Your support helps emotional stories about kindness, healing, and second chances reach more people around the world. Before the ending, please comment, "Let her rest," if you believe every hardworking parent deserves compassion, dignity, and one peaceful day to breathe. Years later, guests still praised the Grand Astor for its beautiful lobby and flawless service, but the people who worked there knew the real story. They remembered the morning a little girl walked through the glass doors with a lunch bag in her hands and tears in her eyes. They remembered how one question changed a manager, a hotel, and hundreds of lives. And Mireya never forgot it either. On hard days, when she saw another tired worker trying to smile through pain, she would pause, offer help, and remember the brave voice of her daughter in that bright hotel lobby. Because sometimes the world does not change when powerful people make big promises. Sometimes it changes when a child looks up and asks for the one thing love knows how to demand. Just one day of rest.